Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to lesson 19, part 2 of Straight Path Academy Arabic Volume 1, Reading Arabic Letters. In part 1 of lesson 19, we learned that this is the hamza. But there's two different types of hamza when it comes to beginning a word. First, we have the connecting hamza, or hamzatul wasl. And this refers to the fact that when hamza is the first letter of certain words, it will be pronounced only if it begins a sentence or speech, but won't be pronounced when the word is connected to what comes before it in continuous speech. This is called the connecting hamza because in continuous speech, this hamza will not be pronounced, but rather the previous word will simply connect to the word beginning with hamzatul wasl. So the hamza will not be pronounced. But that's only in continuous speech when that previous word is connected. If, for example, somebody is beginning to speak with this word, then you will pronounce the hamza because you're not connecting it to anything before it, but rather you are beginning to speak. Now the connecting hamza may be written just like a regular alif, or it may be written like an alif with this symbol above it. Now inshallah, this will become very clear when we simply take a look at Suratul Fatiha. As you can see, all of these green circles show you an example of the connecting hamza, meaning the hamza is only going to be pronounced if it begins speech. Otherwise, it's not going to be pronounced, but rather the previous word is just going to connect to that word with no pronunciation of the hamza. So for example, in the very beginning, we see Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and we see three examples of an alif with that symbol written above, meaning these three are connecting hamzas. And if we pay attention, we'll notice that none of these three are pronounced. We don't say Bismi Allah, we say Bismillah. We don't say Bismillahi ar-Rahman, we say Bismillahir Rahman. And we don't say Bismillahir Rahman ar-Rahim, but rather we say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. However, if we look at this word here, Alhamdulillah, we do pronounce this as Alhamdulillah, because it is beginning speech. However, if we continue, we do not say Rabbi al-Alameen, but rather we do not pronounce that hamza. We go straight from the ba kasra to the lam. Rabbil Alameen. And as we can see, there are many examples of this throughout Surah Al-Fatiha. And the main thing to remember is that when you see this symbol above an alif that begins a word, that means it is a connecting hamza. And it will only be pronounced if it begins speech, but will not be pronounced in continuous speech, but rather the word that it begins will connect to the word before it without pronouncing that hamza. But that brings us to the second type of hamza, which is called the cutting hamza, or hamzatul qat'. When hamza is the first letter of certain words, it will be pronounced every time no matter what, unlike the connecting hamza. This is called the cutting hamza or hamzatul qat'. And the cutting hamza will have hamza written visibly above or below the alif, like this or like this. So this is very simple and straightforward. If you see in the beginning of a word an alif that has a hamza above it or beneath it, then that means that hamza always has to be pronounced, unlike the connecting hamza. And again, this will become very clear by simply looking at Suratul Fatiha. If we look at these red circles, we see three different examples of the cutting hamza, hamzatul qat'. And these are simply words that begin with an alif with the hamza visibly written beneath or above it. So the word iyaka begins with a cutting hamza. You're always going to pronounce that hamza. We say, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een. We don't say, wa iyaka nasta'een, because that would mean this is a connecting hamza, where we would connect that waw and fatha directly to the ya by omitting the pronunciation of this hamza. That's what we would do if this were a connecting hamza, but it's not. We always have to pronounce this hamza because it is a cutting hamza. So we don't say, wa iyaka, we say, wa iyaka. We have to pronounce that hamza. Likewise, when it comes to the word an'amta, siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim, we have to pronounce that hamza. We cannot say siratal ladhina an'amta. We have to make sure we pronounce that hamza. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. There has to be that glottal stop because this is the cutting hamza. So hopefully that's clear. I definitely encourage everybody to just take a look at Surah Al-Fatiha. And you can listen to a well-known, trustworthy reciter and see how they follow these rules. How they only pronounce the connecting hamza when it is in the beginning of their speech, whereas otherwise they will not pronounce it, but rather it will connect to the word before it, omitting the pronunciation of the hamza. Whereas the cutting hamza will always be pronounced every time. Allah knows best. Thank you for watching. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.